everyone. This is Dan Gramza, and welcome to Gramza Market Studies for Tuesday, October 27th. We were looking for some follow-through in this NASDAQ market, hoping to see that because these shadows would add some energy to a potentially explosive move. Well, what we had instead was a market testing those ranges and finding sellers instead of buying. As we discussed yesterday morning that what we were looking at here was weakness. We were looking for unchanged to lower. That's what it says structurally in this marketplace. And again, we're still above the midpoint of this benchmark candle, so I wouldn't totally count out the NASDAQ market, but it does imply sellers are still in control. In the E-mini S&P 500, this did trade through that sell point. This ended up being the difference between that buy point and that sell point was 35 points or $1,750 is the dollar value of that move, and a short position would now be maintained. That would be the concept. Well, we saw some weakness here, but we also saw some strength with the US dollar. And let's take a look at that. What you're seeing across the board when these big red candles is indeed that these currencies got weaker and the US dollar got stronger. So what that means, what does it mean for today's action? We are looking for unchanged to lower, but we're not looking for big moves in these markets. So the currencies, we're looking for a relatively smaller range, not a gigantic move, but we are looking for continued weakness. That would be typical behavior if we're going to see follow through. Now, it also traded through, from this buy point to that sell point in the yen, and that difference there is 160 ticks, or the dollar value is $2,000. The Swissy actually, continued on through that sell point, and so Japanese yen. The Australian dollar has come close to that 80 level, but it got down to 81 and hasn't taken it out yet. So that position, if someone had this long position on, would still be maintained. And in the British pound, the same thing. We saw a little bit of, this is what we're looking for today, actually, this size of range for these other currencies. It's really a rest type mode. And again, for the market to maintain the strength in the US dollar or the weakness in these currencies, I'm not sure if the pieces are really in place to do that, but there's nothing telling us to be a buyer here, and we want to be on the short side of these currencies, which is what these positions are. Canadian dollar continued weaker as well, but if this pops back up today, if we see these markets recover more than halfway through these benchmark candles, this could be a big day up. So we'll see what happens here, or at least for the rest of the week. And when it comes to interest rates, the short end of the curve is still struggling. We see the 10-year notes got through those challenges as we were talking about. The same thing for bonds. We're looking for further weakness in those markets, but we are looking for a rest. This is a pretty healthy move, and typically after this size of move, we should see this market not making huge moves, but just a relatively quiet type session. And when it comes to those currencies, the metals, we see they finally did make a decision. As we talked about, we have this benchmark candle here. We have some green candles on the other side. Really kind of a 50-50 type situation over the last few days here. And when we take out these shadows on the bottom, this should be a big move. Actually, it should have been bigger. So it's an okay move. But it would close out a long position if someone was maintaining that, if you look at that side of it. But right now, this would imply sellers are in control. Same thing for silver. We're looking for an unchanged to lower type day in silver, a quiet range. So the currencies and metals have something very similar in place. Copper, on the other hand, it did back off. It did trade through. If you look at the action that we saw yesterday, it did trade through that sell point. And in copper, that difference would be $1,250 is the dollar value of this move here. And if they get up and get going again, we'd want to be on that long side. I think it still has upside potential in that market. And when it comes to the energies, well, crude oil did back off some more. It made new highs, and yet it found more selling. Again, we're still inside the benchmark candle. I think we have to be cautious about being short that market. Also, it traded through this sell point, and here's the original buy. So the dollar value of that move, if you're talking about the mini contracts, the dollar value of that move would be $3,220. If you're talking about the big contract, which is where $1,000 is every dollar, that would be $8,300 would be the dollar value of that move. But what are we looking for? I think we have to be cautious on the short side of that market. But right now for natural gas, we're looking for continued weakness. It is approaching a very important level. We are not looking for a big day down in that market, but an unchanged to lower type day. Grains, well, they kind of fell out of bed as well too. And, we saw that huge rejection yesterday. Remember we were talking about that? But the fact is, when you see that kind of action, is that bearish? Yes. But we're also talking about a market that's swirling around this weather issue. And even though this has a very high bias to the sell side, we still want to be cautious about that because of the environment that it's in. So what are we looking for these? Well, first let's just talk about what happened here. This would be 7 cents or $350 in the typical contract. It'd be $70 in the micro contract. There's many contracts here in the grains, and you can take advantage of longer term perspectives by using those smaller contracts. They're 1/5 the size of the big contract. So in corn, for example, as this market traded back through that sell point from this buy point, that would have resulted in $750 for the big contract or $150 in the smaller contract. Wheat, the same kind of boat. We're looking at 31 cents is the difference between that buy point and that sell point right here. And that would be $1,550 in the big contract or $310 in the small contract. So if you haven't looked at those mini contracts and you're interested in trading grains, you may want to check them out because it is a way to participate but yet have lower capital requirements. Well, this concludes today's market studies. Looking forward to being with you again tomorrow. And in the meantime, take care.